Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So each week we're taking one of these 9 Beatitudes and just diving deep into them. And thus far in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus has blessed the poor in spirit, the mourning, and the meek. And now he's turning his attention to the tired. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Why do you think he says, for they will be filled? Because they're running on empty. These are people who are putting their time and energy and resources into doing as much good as they can, making small incremental changes when they can, but it is flat wearing them out. They're exhausted, they're running on empty, and they need to be filled. And speaking of filling, do you know why they're exhausted? Because the system that they are trying to actively participate in is rigged against them. The bucket that they keep trying to fill, it leaks. They're filling a leaky bucket. I think about the dozens of people in our church who participate every Tuesday night in our Tuesday night fellowship downtown here, where we feed dozens of neighbors experiencing homelessness every Tuesday. We've been doing it for over 20 years. We are fellowshipping and feeding and clothing and resourcing, providing showers to our neighbors. But we haven't made a dent in 20 years in homelessness in Wilmington. Why? Because the bucket leaks. But should that thwart our efforts from participating? No. We keep coming back every Tuesday because homelessness is a macro level problem. And whether or not homelessness in Wilmington gets state level funding and resources or not, there is still problems at the micro level that we can fix. We can make a difference down here. People have to eat, so we show up and we feed them. People need clothes, so we clothe them. We share the love of God and the gospel of Jesus to those that we know Jesus would most closely identify with. We don't get distracted by the fact that the bucket leaks. We see it. We know that we can't give all we have and to stop the leak. It's a macro level sized leak. We have micro level solutions, but we show up anyway. We keep pouring into the bucket because that's still a better option than doing nothing. And that's what I love most about First Baptist. After 2.5 years I've been here, I've spent a lot of needed time getting acclimated to the problems and the issues surrounding our community. First Baptist has been in a lot of think tank meetings. We have partnered with organizations like Good Shepherd and Link and Habitat and Warm and Church World Services, the Harrelson Center, Salvation Army, Living Hope, Vigilant Hope, Eden Village, and so many more local organizations and also other churches. First Baptist has even been the host of a lot of these conversations. And all of us are paying attention and asking similar questions. All of us, we see the leak. And there just aren't clear answers, though, on how we pool our resources to stop the leak. But what we can do is fill the bucket. And what I love about our church, what I love about our members, is we keep showing up at these meetings. We keep showing up to pour our love and resources into the bucket. We keep partnering. We keep identifying micro level options, even in the face of macro level problems. And we're making a difference. That's why we keep doing it. We are happy to contribute to micro level solutions if there are any. But in the meantime, we're going to keep pouring love into the buckets that we see in Wilmington. We're going to keep doing the next right thing. There's a book that rabbis in the early first century, they would write down their thoughts about Scripture. It's called the Talmud. In the Talmud, it says this, and it applies so well. We do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. We're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are we free to abandon it. So speaking of Tuesday nights, we have offered a community meal every Tuesday night without fail for decades. I made the mistake about 6 months ago in staff meeting. We were calendaring all the big events that were coming up for the rest of the year. And when we got to Christmas Eve, I noticed it was on a Tuesday night. And so I just arbitrarily said to the room, well, I guess we won't be having Tuesday night fellowship that night. Jim and Jane looked at me like I had two heads. Jim very politely but matter-of-factly said, we don't cancel Tuesday nights for anything, not even Christmas Eve. So you know what we're doing? We're adjusting our Christmas Eve worship schedule. And you can deal with it because it's on a Tuesday night. And we're going to make sure that we feed our neighbors experiencing homelessness. I love our church. I love what we do. And we do way more than just Tuesday nights. We're budgeting for next year right now, looking at 2025. And there's something you may not realize. Every dollar that we give to our budget, 10% automatically goes to mission partners locally, statewide, and internationally, without fail. Now, you may not know that we have a $2.4 million budget, which means at minimum we give $240,000 right off the top. Now, some are church initiatives, like when we packed 30,000 meals together in our activity center. Some are local partners, like the Help Hub that serve local families here in Wilmington. Some are state partners, like the CBF Refugee Welcome House that we partner with. Some are international partners, like Grace Ministries, where we go every year to Guatemala. 10% of our budget automatically goes out the door. Now, from a purely business perspective and mindset, that's a terrible practice. If the goal was to keep what we gain, we're not doing a very good job of it. Now, I'm sure you would probably have serious questions about our policies if we weren't a church. But we are a church. And what church does is the next right thing. We fill, we pour into leaky buckets. We partner, we give, we donate, we serve, we practice missional, sacrificial giving because even though we can't fill leaky buckets, this is not our job to abandon. We have to keep doing the next right thing. And there are tremendous partners doing tremendous work that need our help here and across the world. If you haven't toured the Harrelson Center yet, it is time. It is in our backyard, and they are serving the needs of hundreds of thousands of people in our community. Learn about all that they do. They know where the leaks are, and they're working daily to stop them. And they need more of us helping to fill the buckets. Now, we're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are we free to abandon it. And Jesus knows this. He spends most of his days healing the sick, tending to the needs of the poor, feeding those who are hungry. Jesus is acutely aware of where the leaks are in the buckets, so he spends his time filling them. But Jesus also knows that this kind of work is taxing. It wears people out. It's why he sends his disciples not alone, but in pairs. It's why churches in the book of Acts work together to care for the widows and the orphans, because we need each other to keep going and to make a bigger difference. But we have to be careful because it will wear you down. And we have a name for this called compassion fatigue. Now, Jesus never used this phrase. It's not in the Bible, but we know that Jesus knows it because in the midst of his efforts of serving and working, he reminds everyone to make sure to take a break. He rests himself. He makes sure to take a Sabbath. Compassion fatigue is a real thing. When we help and help and help and help and pour and pour and pour and pour out, we get tired and eventually empty. And Jesus knows this. He sees it in the eyes of the Jewish people here in Matthew 5. They are flat worn out. They are running on empty, and they need someone to fill them up. So do we. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Why would Jesus say this if he didn't see the toll that service has on people? We try and try and try and try and give and give and give and give and serve and serve and serve and serve, and then it just hits us. I can't do this anymore, at least not right now. I need a break. Do you know what the most consistent expectation from God to humans is in the Old Testament? The most consistent, repetitive law that is mentioned in the Old Testament. Keep the Sabbath. Think about that. You have to build in a rhythm of rest. You have to find something in your life that refills you. God knows it. God even wrote it into the first chapter of the Bible, and it's like we just missed it. You work 6 days, you rest 1. Henry Nouwen calls this, and I love this, raising your drawbridge. You have to if you're going to continue to work long term. Jesus' beatitude here is much of a balm today as it was 2,000 years ago, because the work is plenty and the workers are few. There's so many in our world, though, that are trying with all of their effort and resources to pour in to leaky buckets, and good for them. It is overwhelming to think, though, how one person can make a dent big enough for others to see. You know, in 2019, this is before COVID, all the numbers get crazy because of COVID, but before COVID, 7.6 million people died of starvation and had been every year. Just in that year alone, 7.6 million. Every 10 seconds, a child dies from hunger-related causes. Now, I didn't make this up. These stats come from UNICEF and the United Nations. Poverty and food insecurity are giant, leaky buckets in our lifetime. And these stats don't even include families who are not quite on the threshold of being food insecure, but they're close. They are one car accident, one flat tire, one medical bill away from experiencing homelessness themselves. They're not below the poverty line, but they're real close. Here in Wilmington, we're dangerously close to having an affordable housing crisis on our hands. It's not like we're talking about poverty somewhere else. It's in our neighborhoods. There are so many macro level leaks. And we haven't even talked about cancer. That's the biggest of our lifetime. In 2018, the National Cancer Institute received almost $6 billion that were earmarked for cancer research, and it's not even close to being enough. $6 billion cannot stop the leaky bucket of cancer. Now, we make progress every year, but we still have a long way to go. And people know this, and that's why they fight for this, as they should. We can invest in trying to stop macro level buckets from leaking, but there are still going to be other leaky ones that we know, like suicide prevention, domestic violence, mental health advocacy. We haven't even mentioned wounded warriors, first responders, scholarship assistance, natural disaster aid like Red Cross for victims of hurricanes and floods. But then there's also Alzheimer's and dementia and better senior adult assisted living facilities. There's also sex trafficking, public and special education, child abuse, AIDS, global water needs. You could go on and on and on. There are so many leaky buckets in our world. We need everyone hungering and thirsting for righteousness. But you can't go at it alone, and you can't do it all, and you can't go nonstop. There's no way. That's just the hard truth of our lives. There's not enough of us to go around. There's not enough time for us to fill all the buckets in our lifetime. So what do we do? Anything that makes a difference. Pick something that you are passionate about and pour your time and resources into that bucket. It's better than doing nothing. At least one thing you can help change the course of, maybe even two. You can find it next door at the Harrelson Center if you're looking. There are 20 plus mission partners next door that are serving our city. Just find one, pick one, and jump in both feet. Get so far into it that you begin to see the leak at the bottom of the bucket. And then join with your friends and family to pour as much as you can into it. But as you know, this will wear you out. You will get tired. You will feel empty. But take heart, because God's abiding grace and love will be with you in the work. God will replenish you so you can get back out there. For blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. We will be filled.